Be sure to subscribe and like our channel. You know, Zach, we had technical issues 2 weeks in a row. This point, like this, not as bad as last week, man. I think maybe we need to go feed a goon or something.
Maybe.
I don't know, because like usually we don't have
attack.
But that said, this is Queen City Videocast, and in case you're wondering, here's all our herbs in the videocast. Although we're not going to talk about herbs today, and we're also Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. Once it gets remixed, sent to our sound producer, and come to other side, eventually we'll be live radio again. Because you know what? As we found, real radio is live. Real stuff happens on the show when it's live. You try to, if you give people. You know, when we were doing podcasting and everyone could sort of come back and say, oh, we're going to cut all these parts off. We're left with no interesting parts of the show. Real radio is still awesome. Stuff happens. You never know what's going to happen on Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole because it's live videocast. And eventually we will be on live radio in Toronto again. And where are we located today?
We are located
every week. Where are we located?
Gerrard Street East, 607 Gerrard Street East, Suite 401 and 2. That means we have most of the floor when you come up here. So
that's right.
Visit us
in East Chinatown. Right, we're like Egg Shen of East Chinatown
with the penthouse.
Yeah, like real Chinese magic. You come up to the 4th floor and you see what's going on up here.
That you do. The only thing we need is boss.
There we go. So today, we're not going to talk about herbs. In fact, we're going to talk with Matt from chaostarot.com and the creator of the trinary web app, Sigil Generators. We just got about 10 different styles of automatic sigil generation tools. So we're happy to have Matt on. We're going to talk about, Technomagic, except this time, usually we talk about the magic, and it's sort of divorced from the tech. But today I have a feeling I will earn my geek points, and we'll talk about the tech. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So what convinced you to what convinced you to write all the different applications for the sigil generators, the trinary web app application, which is really like 10 or so applications?
It was a classic case of feature creep. It started as one thing, and I was like, well, hey, I could just add this other thing. Well, hey, I could just add, the next thing you know, I've added too many things.
But what convinced you to do the first one, right? The first sigil generation.
The first one I was pretty new to chaos magic to start with. This was like right after I got into it. And I had found Sigil Scribe, and I'm a website guy and then a magic guy. So I was like, hey, that's cool. There's a website that makes sigils. So Sigil Scribe does only a 9x9 or 3x3 square. And I had just one pet peeve about it. I was like, this is awesome, but I wish it did this. I don't like the way it reversed letters. So, sorry, not reverse letters. I don't like the way it removed duplicates. It did it in the reverse order as I would. It took them off like the front instead of the back or vice versa. So I was like, I'm going to make one that doesn't do that because that's driving me crazy. And then from there, I'm going to add the planetary ones, and I'm going to add the tarot card parts and all that.
So one of the things is you'd seen one and kind of made your own, and then all of a sudden it kind of bubbled into 20. It's about 20 different applications right now. I mean, not all of them are sort of applications. Some of them are sort of web pages that give you more information.
Yeah. Yep.
But how do you use these sigils, like, the Chaos Star sigils and other sigils that you made in your own life? How do you use them? And
Mostly when I'm on the go, or I need something really quick. Because I still, don't get me wrong, I love to draw and I love to make art. So I really like the regular way of making sigils also. But this is great for when, there's those times in your life where you have your phone on you, you don't have your sketchbook on you, you're maybe rushed for
right.
time, you got to kick something out in the next 5 minutes before your interview starts for good luck or something like that. So this will just spit them out, and that's that.
Well, maybe we could talk about it's been a while since we actually talked about the normal. I mean, I hesitate to use normal way to cast sigils. Given that I wrote a book, Hands on Chaos Magic, and I had like 10 different ways to cast sigils too. I mean, normal is probably the wrong way to say it. But let's go over the classic spare tools, like, because you said like there's the normal way and then there's the sigil generation. So how do your normal sigil magic look when you're casting it the normal way?
Mostly it's like word method where you take the letters and you stick them together. Sometimes I'll do a magic square by hand too, but it's usually the word method. Sometimes I'll do a mantra. Sometimes I'll do the picture method where it's kind of like a pictorial representation of what you want, but mostly word method.
I see. So, there's a few different methods when we're talking about sigils here. So obviously with the algorithms that you're programming, that is one method. Now, when you've also done it where you've actually done the sigils themselves physically. So in the process, how does that change things when you're actually doing the sigils? That might become, say, a subconscious cueing or divination for your subconscious energies to actually figure it out. With an algorithm, you don't get that. So where does that rectify as like a piece in your as you've seen in practice? Does it make a big difference, you doing it yourself and kind of taking those points? Or are you able to find that if you just did the straight algorithm and then just put the intention to it, the results are about the same?
I missed some of that due to internet problems, but it sounded like it was how do they stack up against each other, basically?
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
I haven't had any problem with it personally. I've heard some people are very adamantly like, you have to do, which I'm like, okay, you're a chaos magician and you have this strict rule about what you have to do. That's odd. But they'll be really against
this. I think it probably comes down to this. There's probably two arguments here. One is sitting down and putting your mantra. You have the intention, you sit down and put your mantra in. You probably have a less desired result if you don't see the process of how the sigil is made. Then the second thing is the second argument is that without the intuition coming to the sigil magic process, you can't actually connect to the sigil. So I think there's these sort of, they're not voicing the argument for this, but I think that's the argument that is going on here between using these electronic tools and not.
I think part of it's a paradigm where, like, if you don't think it'll work, then obviously it won't work for you because you've got that lurking in your mind the whole time you're doing it. And I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it, so I don't have a problem with it. And some people have some people have very clear ideas about how. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm talking over you because I'm getting a lot of chop here.
That's okay. That's okay. I was going to say I personally have used the sigils on the Magic Web app perfectly fine. In fact, in the recent article that I wrote for that was on self-deification, I made a sigil that was to summon Luciferge, Rokali, using the Magic app Now, granted,
Nice.
I had to go through some of the different ways until I found a sigil that I sort of aesthetically liked. But people use that sigil to summon that particular entity just fine. So,
Yeah, different people put stock in different parts of the process, where some people are like, you have to draw it by hand or it's never going to work. And then I got into like the Alan Chapman Advanced Magic for Beginners. He's like, hey, try using anything for a sigil. Try reusing your last sigil to be, made with your last intent and use it for this new intent. Or go outside and see a cool cloud and try using that as your sigil, like where it's not necessarily as important that it created in any certain way. It's just you deciding that it's a symbol for your intent.
now that comes also like the idea of going out into the sky. It also comes from John Fraze, and a whole bunch of sort of people who are on the edges of the chaos sort of magic thing. So, and Alan Chapman too. But I don't think there was ever an intention that the sigils would be such a militant way of making sigils when, well, at least not in the late 80s when chaos magic was coming about. I don't know. I think we would make sigils however we made sigils. Like, that wasn't so bad. I mean, but now one question I have is that there's about 10 different algorithms here. And maybe we could talk about the actual how these things actually figure out how to draw the sigils. Like, how does the Chaos Star one work, or how does the music one work? Those are two vastly different ones, and I'd be interested to know how they actually come up with the steals. Or in the music one, obviously, it's notes, musical notes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. You want to do Chaos Star first?
Well, that's the first one on the website. So
For a while now, I've been wanting to make a method that had to do with the Chaos Star, just because obviously it's the Chaos Star. Who doesn't want to stick that right in there somewhere? So I just mapped that out where A equals 1, B equals 2, and then it goes around the 8 points, around and around until you get to Z. And I decided to go counterclockwise, just because why not? So it looks a little less like a clock.
Right.
So one's at the top, 2 is to the left a little, and then onward.
Right. So the algorithm's actually pretty simple. It's like you can have a coordinate piece in like however big of the graphics are, and you're kind of connecting the points between each letter, and then you'd have to go around. I don't know. There's 26 letters in English, so you'd have to go around four times and then some.
Yeah. So there are repeat points. Where like every 8th one, you're back at the same star tip.
Right. So do you randomize the letters going in then, or?
No, they're not randomized at all. You could do that on paper. It's just always A equals 1, B equals 2, all the way around.
Right. All right. So that's pretty simple. That's a pretty simple way to do it. And in fact, everyone could draw out a piece of paper who's not a computer scientist, draw 8-pointed star, literally draw the letters counterclockwise, and then draw your sigils, which is not too different from a rose cross, where you just take a rose cross and basically draw your sigils based on the rosy cross, connect the letters one after another. So
Yeah,
that's a pretty
similar.
simple algorithm. And the sigils kind of look, if you go to the site, they do have that look that it's very angular, like Elder Cthulhian sigils that I used to see, like from the Necromonicon and stuff like that. That's how the seals look. It could be the green too, which is the default color for the website. But they're very, very angular because basically he described the algorithm. That's very angularly. Now, to me, I feel like once you know the algorithm, like it's not a black box. It's a magical tool at that point. But I have a degree in computer science, so I'm a nerd.
Now that one, and I'm sorry, this is probably what you were asking about before, but there is another way to use that one where you just hit the random button and it spits out a random sigil that has
Random sigil.
nothing to do with anything you type. Yeah. That one
Because
is
it's
just
interesting. Did you ever use that? Basically, but if you spit out a random sigil, you're still coming to the table of the screen with an intention.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and just like I was saying, I read in Alan Chapman's stuff, it's like, well, anything could be, as long as it's a unique symbol that only stands for my intent, why not be random?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So
Now,
yeah, I do, and that's just a straight random number generator that spits out it spits out 8 letters in the background where you can't see them that hit every point on there, and it just puts them in a random order.
right. So what about the music one? Now that one looks way different. Like that's a different algorithm altogether.
So there's a couple music ones, but the one that I invented like from scratch, I'm about to take all the magic out of that one when you see how simple it is. But there's 5 lines on a musical staff, and there's also the notes in between. So 4 spaces between the lines, that's 9. And then I just used English Kabbalah like you would map to a 3x3 square, the English alphabet. So you've got 9 spots, and I just, instead of putting them in 9 spots on a square, it's the 5 lines and the 4 spaces in between. So
I mean, part of the show is. Go ahead, Matt.
If you allow repeats and vowels and just type A, B, C, D, E, F, G into that thing, it'll go up by half steps all the way up the staff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, even looking through it, I mean, this is because from the Taoist Qigong standard, you do have the QueenCityCurio also. So, I mean, that's a variation of 9. So how does that start breaking down to the algorithms then?
Sorry, you broke up there a little at the end. What was the last?
How are you doing the algorithm for the QueenCityCurio? Because there's 9 variations on that point, right? So at that point, you're probably not using
very similar.
the intentions of them, right?
Yeah, I found that there were 9, and it's really easy to map to a 3x3 square. So I just did the same thing and said instead of spots in a 3x grid, it's going to map to one of these 9 things. So a lot of those, I was just like, holy shit, what all can I find, and just overlay it onto, there's 26 Bikram yoga poses. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. Isn't that a nice coincidence? I do plan on adding, that's one of the things I'm going to put in the next update and get a chance to, is the meaning behind the QueenCityCurio.
Right.
So people could click on those and see what the meaning is. But right now it's just like basically a gesture version of a mantra where you would be saying something, unintelligible string of sounds generated from your intent. Well, this is just, you'll be doing these gestures instead.
Right. And then you could obviously combine both of them together, possibly, which even makes even more glossalia and chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the things that is most important is that if you're listening to us right now, you're probably realizing that none of these algorithms that we're describing are particularly hard. Like, if you have some basic scripting skills, you could probably script your own. If you don't like what you're hearing as far as the methods, the inspiration there is you could go and script your own sigil generator, because that's not to say it wouldn't take you a couple hours, but it is to say maybe it's a little easier than you think. Like,
oh yeah,
that's cool. There could be more sigil generators.
Yeah, a lot of people have come to me asking, how do you do that? I want to do that. I'm very curious. I'd like to build my own. Or some people have these very niche, like, I made my own magical language and I want to make a sigil generator based on that. And I invented this language just for me. So obviously it's not going to be on my website. It's this dude wants his own personal thing. So I made a tutorial for how to do it. That's up on my site too. That runs you through the basics of using JavaScript to draw a line from point A to point B based on where you
Man.
are.
I didn't even see the tutorial, and I was looking through the website.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, even the roll the dice for the random models. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's straight ripped out of Libernal, where Peter Carroll was like, "Hey, grab a dice and see what you're going to be." I thought about expanding that, and making it a 20-sider and adding a bunch of different models, but it's one of those things where it's just so many ideas I want to do with this in so little time.
So, being the programmer behind all this, is there generally a particular algorithm you lean toward that you actually personally like more?
Not really. I mean, disappointing answer, but I really, a lot of this stuff I do for, I don't know, I guess it's the web designer in me is like, hey, what the users want kind of comes first. So a lot of the stuff I put in there, I'm like, okay, well, I got to do this in case someone wants it, and it's not even something I want. It's just there because I want to make a complete piece of work and not have any big gaping holes in it. Like, well, why didn't you add this other thing?
Right.
Like a prime example of that is like the model generator where it spits out spirit or psych or energy model. I thought it was stupid to put the meta model in there, but someone wanted it. So I'm like, well, yeah, we went back and forth for about 10 minutes with our points of view. And I was like, I could just make it an option. Fuck it. I'll throw it in there, even though I don't like it. Check this box to use that one too. In my opinion, if you're getting a random model from the first 4, you already in the meta model, baby. Like that's what allows you.
Yeah.
You're pretty much
you don't
you're
need
pretty
it
much
to
already there.
Out.
Like if you're gonna.
Yeah. So I was like, why would you need to be told to work in the meta model with a random model spitter outer? You're
a
there,
more meta
you're
model
already.
of meta.
Yeah. So yeah, I try to put everything in there.
Like that's a curious thought. I'd be like, what's more meta than a meta model?
The meta model?
Yeah.
The hypercube when you break the 8th wall. That's meta.
Meta. So why do you think that when you have these discussions with some people, why do you think they're getting so hung up on the actual sigil design and stuff like that? How you have a certain way of doing it?
I feel like people want to make it traditional. It's like, I don't know if people are just wired that way or what, but they're like, oh, some new kind of magic that's not traditional. And then what do they do when they get in there? They start making a bunch of fucking rules. They start making a bunch of dogmas. They make it more and more traditional. And I'm like, why don't you just go do that traditional thing? Why are you coming to chaos magic and then trying to Hail Eris it into a religion? Or tell me sigils won't work unless you draw them by hand or do XYZ, or it's very strange to me. I don't understand. People seem to be hung up on doing things in a traditional dogmatic way, come to chaos magic and then fight about shit like this. It's weird. People are weird animals.
Well, it's like I said, also if you coded this yourself, and you have the skills to code any of these yourself, the way that you're going to approach this mentally is like it's already going to be, it's in the method itself is ingrained, whereas it's already kind of your energies in there. If people are coders, they know what I mean. Like, you're using tools that you created to create sigils. It's like, if you think that your energy is not involved with the process after spending a couple hours sitting down and coding something out, that's not been my experience.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Coding can be very much like an art form. So when I use it, at least, it is like an artist sitting down and drawing out a sigil, because I sat down and did all the creative process of writing the code.
Yeah, and the fact is, it's running on your server. Sort of, it's not exactly the same as an old style paper, but it is like a virtual paper. Like, it's clearly you wrote the code, your signature's on it, your energies, sort of, you spent your energy on it. So, even if people thought, well, maybe a sigil generator would never work for me, because I didn't put my energy in it. If you code it yourself, the argument still is a little rougher, I think. Like, because then at that point, it's your website, it's your stuff, it's your code. I'm not sure that even, I'm sure classical sigil people, which is amazing to me to talk about classical chaos magic sigil generation, but that's okay. That's just me. I'm there with you, Matt. I'm kind of there with you, given that, like, I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to make.
There's a bunch of different
anything,
ideas. There's a bunch of ideas out there about like what steps are most important too. Where if you think the creation step is vital, then it gets into, whose energy is in it. Are you creating while you do it? Yada, yada. Or you could come from the school of thought that I could just use any symbol and it's the charging step that's important. It doesn't matter how created. It's when I sit down with it and I meditate on it and I visualize it and I hit the gnosis. And so
I used to go out and
different strokes for
sigils based on
folks.
gang sigils.
Nice.
And graffiti.
I can throw that
and
in there.
graffiti, sir.
What?
I used to be a tagger.
And
right. Graffiti. I'll just take the graffiti, take parts of the graffiti. There's my sigil.
Nice.
Yeah, right.
Hardcore.
What? Yeah, right. I mean, they weren't really gang symbols; they're more graffiti than gang symbols. You know what I'm saying?
Different people.
I agree with Bear Rambles. Like, providing an input error to type of stuff in the server site code, even piping into DevNub, would be an input of energy into the entropy pool. Totally. That is correct, actually, from a technical point of view. It would, in fact, be put into the entropy pool, because the mechanics and the heat of even typing stuff in and the electrons to go to nothing would add entropy into the universe just by a little bit. So great point. I think too, there's a lot of books on sigil magic now that came from not chaos magic. Like, there's a few books and they have a different tone than hands-on chaos magic or Liber Null or advanced magic for beginners. They just have a different tone. Like, they have a more authoritarian tone. And I think what you're saying, what a lot of you are saying, is that that these people believe that it's coming from that more authoritarian tone from people who actually, although they don't want to talk about it, actually reappropriated sigil magic in an authoritarian manner, which is like the opposite of what chaos magic was saying. It was sort of let's make some money, and to do that, to make money, you have to generally be authoritarian. That's how the culture actually works. Hate mail at AndriehVitimus@gmail.com. I mean, because people generally want a strong hand to guide them, so they kind of. I know why. Like it's okay. But that tends to sell authoritarian voices. So people tend to have.
I mean, it's got the
There's a couple
ripe
books now on
audience, so.
sigil magic from points of view that were divorced from chaos magic, and having seen some of them, they have much more authoritarian views on this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Whoa.
you're always going to have an audience if you
Haters
writing
gonna
a
hate.
book that tells you how to do thing. You're going to look for those people who are looking for a leader, who are looking for a shepherd, who are looking for somebody tell me what to do. They're looking for authoritarian.
Yeah, and I think,
not to say everybody who reads books is looking for that, but like a lot of them go there because they want someone to tell them what to do.
And I think we need to kind of talk about that a little. It's clear, you've been around chaos magic circles for a little while, and we don't often talk about that. Like, chaos magic has its roots in anarchy. Everyone forgets that, and when you divorce the culture of anarchy and sort of against the status quo, against within the DY culture, and then sort of go into a more authoritarian voice, which actually is divorcing the same things that people complain chaos magic all about, like that we divorce the tools from the original context. The same is true of the books that put an authoritarian spin on sigil magic. They actually divorce the sigils from the original DIY culture and context. And I think that's important that we kind of see that. Like, obviously that's good commercial decision. I can't fault it from a money standpoint, but it is divorced from the original kind of punk rock culture of the 90s and 80s that spawned the growth of chaos magic.
Yeah, I mean,
true.
especially when you're talking about, well, anything can be used for anything. I mean, from a programming standard, I mean, this is where, see what pops up and make use of it. Because, I mean, hell, a napkin could be used.
I think people have a hard time recognizing that their personal biases are just personal biases sometimes. I mean,
That's true.
Like you said, anything can be used for anything, but try to convince some of the people who are in the occult right now that they could do a really cool working with Christian God and maybe results, and they'll throw up in their mouth because they're like, no, I'm not working with
Christian
that.
God,
I'm like,
and
dude,
who?
you can work with anything.
Christian God
just
and who?
Modern occultists. A lot of try to get any modern
who
occultist.
was the second? Who was the second force to that? There was the Christian God, and then there was another force.
Just I think I said Christian God to get results or something.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Christian God could certainly get results. Like if you could stomach it. Like
yeah. And I don't personally dig that,
though.
But yeah. But I mean, it's all, if you're from the point of view that it's all about like Jungian archetypes and shit, how strong is that archetype if you are one of these people who were unfortunately raised as a Christian all through your entire childhood? It's hard to shake that shit. No matter how much you disagree with it, it's still a strong archetype in your mind that you can use.
I mean, to get over that shit, I had to do a black mass. I mean, before I could really get over it. I mean, that's classic LaVeyan stupidity or goodness, depending on your point of view. But like the whole point was to be so shocking that you're like, you can't be saved by Christianity at the point you do that. That's the whole point, so you can get past it. And I don't think I'm the only one who had to do stuff like that to get past the conditioning. I mean, but now I can actually work with that sort of force without any issue. But even from a purely energy model, even crappy prayers are still prayers, right? Like I mean, it's got a lot of energy.
Yep.
Yeah, and you see the same pushback with science, which I get a lot because I have a Technomagic thing. So people are like, science and magic don't mix. I'm so mad at, because the personal bias thing. Science has told them magic is stupid. People who believe in science have told them their whole occult and all this paganism is ridiculous. They think it's like oil and water, but I don't know. If you can use
but we know
Superman as
better.
an invocation, you should be able to use something like science that already gets results and is way firmer based in, whatever plane we're on right now and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's there for the taking, and people just say, no, I'm going to never use science because I'm mad. And the same with psych model. A lot of people are pissed at some psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist who said something to them at some point when they were a teenager, and they're like, fuck psych model. How would you say fuck psych model? It's like a fourth of the chaos magic, and that's
like
the
80% of magic
a meta
falls
model.
into the psychological model. Like
the
you cannot exclude the psychological model. Like you can explain 90% of magic or 80% with the psychological model and do quite well. Like, granted, once you start doing it for a while, that falls apart in practice, but that's okay. You can get pretty far before you have to say, oh, maybe there's something else out there. But still, like, why would you throw that away? Like if you don't understand the tools of how your brain works, you can't really do magic.
Yeah, so many people will talk about all the different models, and then when you get to psych, they kind of give that little eye roll, like, oh, you psych model kitties, that's cute. Well, you're going to be in big trouble when you run into a real spirit if you're thinking it's in your imagination. I'm like, I'm not convinced you know what psych model is, the way you're talking.
Right. Yeah, I'm not convinced they know what the psychological model is either. Like, I mean, at that point, like, about this. I'm not sure that they understand what the models mean at the point they say real spirit. You kind of missed the point of the models at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the model of magic. It's not just regular psychology. But people act like it's just regular psychology and placebos and like tricking yourself. No, that's regular psychology. This is the psych model of magic.
Yeah, which includes almost most people use the psychological model will include all of the Jungian archetypes, which form all the Platon, like basically have a lead back to Plato and the Platonic like perfections. So it's like that are inside of us at all times. Like, so it's kind of like, this is not just trivial. Like, even if you said it was just psychological, like it shows kind of a behavioralist viewpoint of the psychology, not even a cognitive science view of it. Like the more advanced kind of like, well, there's a black box here, let alone a Jungian view that is psychological, that has much more of a mystical psychological viewpoint about stories and magic and how we interact with the world. Like it kind of shows, you're right, Pavlo and his dog. Okay, you got that one down. And believe it or not, behavioral repatterning works great as an actual practical way to actually better your life. But you kind of miss some cognitive leaps if you're just using behaviorism. And that's probably why you get the scorn when you're talking to people about it. It's that they think it's just this and that, and instead of like the more nuanced kind of models of psychology.
Yeah, people be crazy.
People be crazy.
People be crazy.
They do. You kind of hit on something that I've been thinking about recently there too with I don't know, there's the idea of like the psychic sensor, right? And there's the idea of collective unconscious. And a lot of people say, well, that's why we can't, fly around and shoot fireballs, is because there's an agreed upon collective idea of what is possible and what is not. And that's kind of holding you back. And those are all, I had an idea recently that those are kind of overcomplicated, and you could Occam's razor that and just say, like, if mind controls everything and we live in a universe that's created by our, thoughts and whatnot, the human brain just kind of seeks a cohesive storyline. In the same way that it seeks to find faces. You put a couple dots on a piece of paper and all of a sudden you're like, that's a smiley face. I think that's one of the things the human brain naturally looks for, just like faces in the clouds and stuff, is it seeks a storyline that makes sense, a narrative, a believable narrative. So
that's certainly what a lot of psychological modeling would say too, not just psychological magic. Like cutting edge psychology is basically all about we're creating narratives all the time to actually have a consistent narrative, which is actually why I think the psychological model breaks down once you do enough magic. It's sort of like the narrative has to include things larger, so that way it can account for more things, like more oddities, basically.
Yeah.
And it's because we have such a bias in the psychological modeling is behaviorism, not necessarily like the full scale of cognitive science. It's very much like it's very much at that point like, yes, we have to expand past the limited view of psychology because the narrative is getting too weird, essentially.
So yeah, that one just kind of blew my mind when I thought about it, because there's all these like complicated ideas around the psychic sensor and the collective unconscious, and it's really could be just as easily explained by it doesn't make sense to us. There's no storyline reason I should be able to fly around right now. So if my mind is this involved in magic and my mind is trained to find a cohesive narrative, a storyline that makes sense, I'm not going to be able to do anything that just makes zero fucking sense. There has to be some kind of way, and that's where you get, I do a sigil for money, and then this weird random series of coincidences happen because that makes sense more than money fell out of the fucking sky. Or
it's
money just appeared in front of me. Yeah.
It's an excuse for the magic to work. Yeah, exactly. It's very much an excuse. It's like, well, this happened because I did a magical ritual, as opposed to this happened. It could have happened at any time, but you need an excuse for it to happen. And it goes with that narrative theory too. It goes with the idea that, hey, I did a ritual. I've convinced myself that something should happen, and now that I've done that, something happens. So the money comes because it's now within the narrative structure of the story.
And it usually comes in a way too that also makes sense. It doesn't just make sense because you did the ritual, but it also makes sense because the manner that it came to you it didn't just appear out of thin air. It's always like it was a settlement or a long lost uncle in your will, or you got a raise,
right,
or something that makes sense.
Although it usually would be unpredictable, right? Like it makes sense when you see it, and then it basically doesn't make sense in that you wouldn't have expected it.
Yeah.
Because if you could have expected it, you would probably have done it.
Yeah.
Which is the classic reason that it's hard to prove any of this shit to like a hardcore skeptic, because it always kind of comes around in a way that could be explained as luck.
Yeah, well, I'm just paying attention to different things.
Yeah.
That's the classic, hard explanation, right? The classic one is always that, like, well, I was just paying attention to different stuff. I'm like, well, that's not really saying the magic didn't work. That's sort of saying it did. And you just have an explanation that's purely psychological. Okay, I guess, sure. If that makes you feel more comfortable, right?
Whatever works.
I mean, that's like the placebo argument, though. In a nutshell, the placebo argument is that too. It's that problem. It's like, well, you can explain this away because it's the placebo effect. Except, the fact that the placebo effect gets better effects than some medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that
or that
say?
it gets any effect at all is magic.
Right, that it gets any effect at all. What does that mean? Why is that going on?
Yeah. People say prove magic exists, and it's like, okay, you already have this thing where it's just an idea, and then it changes reality. So
yeah, exactly. Like,
seems like we're there.
Somebody lied. Somebody, totally said, nope. Here you go. I'm going to just basically trick you into believing something's true, and then it happens biochemically, literally. Like, and people say that's not magic.
How is it not magic? It seems pretty.
Wait,
magic.
you have right. How does that not mean it's magic? Like that to me completely never made sense with the placebo effect. It's like you literally are describing a magical effect where the body reconditions itself at a neurochemical or possibly like protein level based solely on intention and their understanding that something was different in reality than what you thought. And some people get, and we're not talking about like minor results, like major results, like cancer goes into remission type stuff. Like, and it's higher level of people that can make this happen than you'd think. It's like 1/3 to 1/2 in some studies. Like, so exactly, it's like your idea of like that just describes a non-magic, like not your idea, but the general hard materialist view that describes that's a way to explain things away with hand waving. Like from a scientific point of view, that sounds weak sauce to me. Like that's literally the opposite almost to me. It's like proving that magic is real. Like your intention has this much effect on your body alone is sort of like a proof that, hey, guess what? There's something to all this stuff.
But nah, it's just placebo, right? Just placebo.
Yeah, it's like when they shit on psych model. It's like, I'm not sure you know what that means. Placebo is magic.
Yeah,
you can't say it's just placebo because that's
and if it gets the results you want.
Yep, one more tool in the toolbox. One of my favorite takeaways from chaos magic is when people say, I don't believe in magic, but I do it because it works. Magic's not real, but it works. It's like that's the best.
Good job. I mean, I don't know what else to say there. Magic's not real, but it works. Okay.
Right. But it works. Okay.
It keeps working, so I'll keep doing it.
But I don't believe in it whatsoever.
I believe in it. I just think that's a fun little like saying that's come out of the butthole of places like CMG or
Now, one thing you have been working on and what's coming up is you're building a new Chaos Tarot with even more sigils and more things.
Yes. Yep. This is my hyper fixation, and I'm just going to keep building it till I die one day.
Right. And that one even includes stuff like, using the Mars Camilla sigils and all the stuff from Agrippa. It's got a whole bunch of new stuff that you're almost ready to release, right?
Yeah, I'm super close on that. It's just a bunch of writing is the main part that's left because I wanted to have an about page. Right now, if you get there and you don't already know how this shit works, it's pretty incomprehensible. So I wanted to have a tab you could go to for each tool that says, this is how you use a sigil. This is the theory behind it. This is how This is why we're drawing the line in this place, is because we turn it into numbers and then trace it out on a grid, So it's more of a teaching thing to get people, I don't know, get people using it who aren't already in the know. Because if you don't know how a magic square sigil works, you get there, it's like, what the fuck is this? It's a bunch of
Yeah, you'd
options.
have no
and
idea
you're supposed
unless
to
you
type
had some
something.
grounding.
Yeah, it makes no sense. So a big part of it is I have like paragraphs and paragraphs for each tool. There's a lot of tools, so that's a lot of writing I've got to get done.
But you have the code done, so it's probably a couple months away from a release.
Yeah, and the design too, because I hate to say it, but my tool was ugly as hell, like for a long time. It works and it does the thing, but like from a web design standpoint, it's like, ugh, really? Your menu is a drop down? Like, I don't know. It's all black and white mainly, and it's so many ugly things about it. It's got it where it counts, but it's just really ugly because I've been focusing for a long time on functionality and, add a new tool, add a new tool, add a new tool. And I never sat down and said, hey, let's add some color to this bitch, or some white space, or some padding, or some designy elements. So that's coming too. It's going to look a lot nicer.
All right. So the website actually that you can find all this wonderful stuff at is chaostarot.com. So I definitely encourage everyone listening, go check it out. We'll have it in the show notes as well. It'll be there. There's a lot of cool stuff. And, like we said, a couple months, the new site will come out. I've kind of got access to see some of it. It's awesome. There's even a lot of tarot decks in there now, and that you can kind of get a reading from, and all random online, and a whole bunch of more sigil generation that uses some Agrippa methods, and just a whole bunch of different stuff like that you can kind of look at and kind of use. If you're in a bind. Got any plans to make an app or something, Matt?
I don't know. For the longest time, I've been like, no, I'm going to just keep it on the website. But I'm kind of coming around to the app idea lately. I might make it an app instead of a website at some point in the future.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, when you do that, I'd give you a few dollars for the app. It'd be cool.
It'd be cool.
Nice.
It'd be cool.
The main thing is I don't know how to make apps for Android or Apple right now. So it would be this whole big process of learning that. And I've got 2 kids and not a lot of free time right now.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So, yeah. But that, it's pretty cool stuff. Well, Matt, if you could stay on for a second, that said, you don't have any in-person events coming up, or do you?
I don't. No.
If you could stay on for a
try
second,
to avoid
then
people.
You try to avoid people. Well, that's somewhat understandable, right?
Yep. Well,
we do, however, have things coming up, don't we?
That we do. We have a lot of things coming up as usual. So tomorrow we have the tarot workshop on enchantments and using tarot, practically speaking, from a magical standard with Andrieh. We also have the last luck ritual for the Lucky Buddha series. We'll be doing other rituals, obviously. However, for the Luck Buddha series, tomorrow is the last one, and people can do that online or in person. We also are going to be rolling out a bunch of workshops on basic fundamentals for people. So that could be crystals, herbs. Is there anything else I'm missing there, sir?
Pendulums. Herbs, mojo bags, washes, food magic,
tea magic,
sigils,
incense,
servitors.
So there's a bunch.
All that stuff. Yeah, everything.
I love kitchen witchery and food magic.
So we got that going on, and
We're gonna totally
we
we're gonna
have-
totally cover we're gonna totally cover how to use like kind of herbal magic when you're cooking.
Yeah. So that's what we got coming up in the closer dates, and then finally, as announced, we have our big committed series with the Goetia and Semaphora, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I might not be, but that is a fun time.
I'll probably make
up.
it. Yeah, all 72. If you're a sponsor of the store, you can participate in rituals for all 72 demons of the Goetia and all the Semaphorish.
Gotta catch
one after, not at the same time. Not at the same time. It's 2 weeks between things, and there'll be some materials for each one that we're kind of producing. So to get and research you got to do on your own to figure out how to follow along with the summoning or kind of ring the bell. But yes, we'll do all 72 and then 72 names of God for the people who like more angelic stuff or want to be more balanced. So we'll have it both sides of the equation, and then we'll start that in July 1st.
That we will. So if you want to become a member, you can go to QueenCityCurio.ca/pages/become a member, and that's where you'll get your subscription to become a member for all those goodies.
That said, Zach's right. The Sangha produced those luck rituals with the luck Buddha, the golden tree, the golden mountain.
Golden Mountain Tree.
The Golden Mountain Tree Saga basically did all those rituals, and yes, he's right. There's going to be some other Sangha rituals soon. There's going to be a Kuan Yin ritual. There's going to be a Sun Buddha ritual. There's going to be a Ganesh ritual, probably a Shiva ritual very soon.
Probably a ritual. So,
right. So, like the Sangha is actually the Sangha working group that does Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism is going to do a whole bunch of stuff. They're just debating among themselves what to do right now after the luck ritual.
That they are.
But there will be a lot that as soon as they get done talking, rituals will start again. I mean, we're in East Chinatown, so you would expect East Asian type rituals, right? So, Matt, thanks for coming on again, and everyone watching today. I hope if you even know a little bit of scripting, you kind of took away from the show that you could make something cool out of it and kind of like reclaim that, if you want to reclaim that part of your life, that scripting part of your life or coding part of your life, and do something magical with it.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Best way.
Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.
I know.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
And if you don't know coding, it doesn't take as long as you'd think.
Yeah, and it's all I taught myself. I never went to school for it or anything. Just Google that shit.
Yeah. You can Google and YouTube that stuff. Literally, probably at the level to do what was on the site for some of them, you could probably learn that in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Huh.
That's it. That's about right. What do you think, Matt?
I'm biased because I've spent my whole life learning.
You spent your whole life learning, but what do you think?
Yeah,
like,
it took me a very long time,
3 weeks?
so I'm a little tear rolling down my cheek.
There we go.
It took me longer than 2 weeks.
Took you longer than 2 weeks. All right. That's probably biased because I do this for a living, so I'm probably like, oh yeah, you can learn that in 2 weeks. 3 months later.
Oh, yeah, you're a coder too, right? Right.
Well, yeah, and data scientist. So I'm thinking, yeah, if I was going to do this, these algorithms would be way more complicated. They would have like weird elements of like AI in them. Like weird weird learning algorithms where the system learns sigils that you're making and kind of tries to mirror your own sigils, and come back with a sigil that you'll aesthetically find beautiful.
I mean, jump
Naturally,
because that sounds awesome.
I might do that actually. Yeah.
I would go to that.
You heard it here, everyone. You heard it here from Andrieh.
Well, I mean that and about the 1,000 other things that I have to do, right? But I might do that, like actually put together a sigil generation where you have to feed in like 30 sigils to it, and then it graphically gets your patterns or maps your the nature of the curves you're using or straight lines, and kind of goes that. Yeah, the Fire Magic book is right. Whatever Bramrels just said, he's totally right. I'm going to finish that first. I'm definitely going to finish that. I'm going to get people to give me a boot party if I don't finish that book soon. Like, I'm going to have them grab me, take me down the stairwells with a hockey stick, and then just start hitting me over and over and over, telling me I need to write more.
You heard it here, everybody. You heard it here.
There you go, Bear Apples. There you go.
Kinky.
Hockey stick. So it's pretty extreme, but I pretty much need it at this point. So. And with that, I should say, I wish everyone good night. Have a great one. You heard the boot party invitation. If you come up to Toronto, I guess one day I'll just be walking down the street and all of a sudden it'll be the game. And I'll end up in Mexico with a t-shirt and a computer. And all I get told is write.
Here's your book right now.
Right. Here's a laptop. Stop writing. Your life depends on it. All right. With that, have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. And stay safe and well. Thanks again for coming on the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me.